Can you do it? Hi, guys. Thank you so much. And I'm awfully sorry that we had a little bit of a technical glitch that was from Crowdcast. So thank you so much for your patience. Just waiting for Dan to jump online. I was just thinking as we were here that it really is times of uncertainty, and as everything stopped working. Oh, there you are. Hey, Dr. Dan.
Hello, Nikki.
I was just saying that, you can plan, and then the uncertain. And I was just thinking in the last 4 or 5 minutes when the platform stopped working, that it should be welcome to an uncertain world where anything could happen right now.
Exactly. And part of, even though we've planned for this, even though ahead of time we were on together on the system, and then once you tried to have us both enter the system, it didn't work. Entering that spacious place of the mind that we can talk about is just like parenting in an uncertain world. How do you find that space inside you, even when things aren't going how you intended, even if you planned them and are really, really feeling that something meaningful is at stake, which is what stress is. You turn the stress into a challenge rather than a threat. And we can talk about that.
Thank you so much. And what a beautiful segue into what we're going to be talking about, and those funny things that just happen. And I noticed for myself where my team had been working so hard at setting up this technology. And I was like, Nikki, breathe, hand on your heart, hand on your belly, take a moment. Thank you, Dan. So I just want to say I'm extremely honored and so grateful, Dan, that you could join us today, particularly for this topic, which is, and thank you to every single person who sent through survey results as well, welcome to parenting in an uncertain world. Just a little bit for those of you that don't know Dan, I was going through my house and popping up a few of the many books. And in all seriousness, Dan, your work and the body of your lifetime of work has informed not only Life Skills Group, but also myself as a mother. And more than that, also as a woman and a human being on this planet. And I just want to say thank you. You have an incredible ability to be able to move really complex studies, ideas, science, and bring them really down into bite-sized pieces. I was thinking that we might start off just with a little bit of a story. First and foremost, I'm loving seeing all the comments of where all our beautiful attendees are from, and it feels really, really special to be part of this community and feeling like we belong right now. Back in 2016, when I first met you, so I'm sitting in Sydney, Australia at the moment, and Dan, where are you sitting?
Santa Monica, California, United States, North America.
Oh, it's very formal. I remember back in 2016 when I was part of the Search Inside Yourself Engage program, and I was a woman from Sydney that was running an organization called Life Skills Group and had been chosen as one of 100 CEOs from around the world to participate in this program. And I remember the anticipation as you walked on the stage thinking, here's this amazing doctor. And like Mindsight has informed so much of my work and so many of your books. And I remember being really touched by the wheel of awareness. And I remember there was just so many pivotal moments in there. And fast track forward to 2018, I remember thinking, I have just committed to building this technology platform to create the ability to be able to share social, emotional, and physical learning. And I didn't know how to do it. And I remember reaching out through a mutual friend of ours, Mark Lesser, and the rest is history. And I just want to say thank you. Not only is the work that you've brought into the world been amazing, but also your generosity, your kindness, and the ability to share your knowledge, just like today, to jump on a webinar at 5 o'clock your time, 10 o'clock our time. And I just want to say thank you.
My pleasure. My honor.
Thank you. There's a few things that really stand out for me. And one of them I just used a moment ago when everything stopped working. And that was name it to tame it. Also, the hand model of the brain. Also, redirect to connect. I just might have made that. Oh, hi. Yeah. Oh, I thought you were waving at me, Mr.
That's the hand model. I am waving at you with my cortex up and down.
Oh, okay. This was me about 5 minutes ago. And instead of command and demand, what we really heard from the survey results and what we heard from participants was deep levels of concern and deep levels of guilt, not knowing what to do, particularly in such an uncertain time. And, you know, in Australia at the moment, there is a large group where there's either schools are providing online learning or those that are homeschooling. But in that, same like sheltering in place in the States, there's also, you know, we're at home with our children trying to work or trying to do housework while trying to keep the students engaged, our children engaged, whilst managing very large emotions. And I'm just wondering if you can help here. And out of all of those things that I've just popped to you, where should we start?
Well, I mean, first of all, it's great to be here with you, Nikki. You know, Life Skills Go and Life Skills Group, you know, are a wonderful source, I think, in Australia for learning deep skills about, you know, not only character development, but emotional and social intelligence. So I'm honored to be here with you. And the topic today for our gathering about parenting in an uncertain world, you know, I think is facing parents all over this planet at the same time that children, number one, who've been in school are not in school anymore. They're at home for the most part in most places. Mm-hmm. We had a beautiful description in the New York Times today about how great a job you in Australia and New Zealand have done. So thank you for your inspiration. I hope the United States can learn from that. And listening to science about how to approach the pandemic. Science also can help us learn how to approach parenting. And so it's an honor to be here with you to talk about that. So parenting in an uncertain world. I think the first thing we should talk about is, in general, what is the goal of parenting, period, in any kind of world. So the parenting part of the title we should talk about. In an uncertain world, I think there's some really interesting things about uncertainty that once we kind of unpack them, will, I think, have a lot of parents participating today take a deep breath and go, oh, I see, life is actually always uncertain. Mm-hmm. The pandemic has just exposed something just underneath the surface that may make us anxious because the brain is always wanting to know what's happening next. And when it's what's called a Vuca world, volatile is V, U is uncertain, C is complex, and A is ambiguous. So VUCA is the kind of world that military and journalists use that term. So when we're parenting with uncertainty, it's volatile, it's unpredictable, meaning uncertain. It's complex, meaning this is not a simple, oh, I just read this 3-paragraph thing, now I know what to do. And it's ambiguous because even if I do take the time to read the whole paper, I'm still not clear. It's ambiguous what I should do. There are different ways of interpreting it. So these are really, really challenging times. And so that's the uncertain world. And when we put even just those two together for this seminar, I think we'll get to where we need to go, because if you combine what's the goal of parenting and what does it really mean to embrace the reality of uncertainty, I think by the end of the hour, we'll come to I hope, a very useful place for all of us.
That would be amazing. And I think one of the things that was just arising for me in that is I hear that and analytically I nod my head, but where do we start? Where do we start?
Yeah. Well, let's start with you as a parent, you, Nikki, and you, the person listening to Nikki and to me. You know, so the first thing to say is that because we're mammals, that means that our offspring, our children, depend on us for several things that once you learn them, it makes your job as a parent a little more clear. So at the simplest level, we can talk about what are called 4 S's
Mm.
that are, I'm trained as an attachment research. So I study parents and children and how the interaction of the parent with the child actually shapes the child's mental life, how they feel, what they think, how they regulate their emotions, how they have relationships that are rewarding or not. And parenting also shapes the brain. The actual development of the structure, the anatomy of the brain is shaped by what we do as parents. So when my wife and I learned this, we wanted to learn attachment science so we could bring the most cutting edge science to our life as parents. So what I'm about to describe to you is basically a summary as an attachment researcher, as a child and adolescent psychiatrist, as a dad. I used to be in pediatrics, as a physician working with kids. These S's come from science, but they're very straightforward to remember. The first S that you probably already knew, it's safety. That our children from infancy onward turn to us to be safe. And so when you look at the pandemic, there's something fundamental to the threat of a virus that could kill vulnerable people, but now we're seeing it even can attack even people who don't have clear vulnerabilities. So we're all at risk. And so right away, your system, and if you do the hand model of the brain, deep parts of the brain, if this is your brain, the higher parts up here think, these middle parts essentially feel, and the lower parts react with instinct, like the instinct of self-preservation. So when you're constantly told wear a mask or social distance, this deeper part of your brain that's beneath awareness is always activating inside your brain a signal that says there's potential harm here. Be very vigilant, be very careful, be on guard. And that, after a while, can be exhausting. So the first thing to say for you, with the first S, safety, is that the pandemic is a challenge to you, to your first fundamental role as a parent, which is to protect your child. So I know for me, even though my 2 kids are in their mid to late 20s and one is in his 30s, I still feel that. I'm on the phone with one of them and, or one gets sick and looks like had COVID and recovered from it, fortunately. But, I can feel my parenting instinct to protect gets there. So we want to do that. Now, when we're overwhelmed, we can also be the source of danger for our kids as we get upset or agitated or screaming or look terrified ourselves. So the first part of the question, what can we do as parents, is take a deep breath. And Nikki and I are going to teach you basic skills of self-regulation, because the research is really clear. If I'm in a state where something meaningful is at stake, that's called stress. How my brain interprets that meaningful thing at stake, either as threatening and I could be completely overwhelmed, or instead of that reactive state of fighting or fleeing or freezing or even collapsing in a faint when I feel hopeless, I can actually turn my reaction to the same challenge into a receptive state. And I say, something? This pandemic is challenging. Even challenging to the point where the meaningful thing is life itself. I could lose the life of a loved one, my own life. I could lose my livelihood for people who have become unemployed. So these can be interpreted as challenges. You stay receptive. Your child will pick that up and will see in you that even though there are meaningful things at stake, they look to your face, they look for your eye contact, they watch your expressions. They're looking at your posture, your gestures, the timing and intensity of response. They're listening to your tone of voice. All those nonverbal signals, your child soaks it in like a sponge. If you're freaking out and terrified, they're going to get freaked out and terrified. So the first step, as we did in our first exercise, is just try this. Try putting a hand on your chest and a hand on your abdomen. Take some nice deep breaths. And try switching it out so the hand on your abdomen goes to your chest, the one on your chest goes to your abdomen. deep breaths, and just see how that feels. And now switch it out, and whichever one feels better, put that one on top for now. And, we find in a survey that, about 3/4 of us feel right on top is most comforting, about 1/4 left on top, and most people find it comforting. So before you start interacting with your kid, get yourself from a reactive state. And Tina Payne Bryson, my co-author, and I wrote a book called The Yes Brain, where we teach you how to go from the no brain state of reactivity, fight, flight, freeze, or faint, to a yes brain state. And essentially what you want to do is be in this receptive yes state. So that's the first thing. The first S is safety.
And Dan, can I just speak to that for a moment? So sure. As a mother, I hear that, and I might have the best intentions, and yet I've been in a house now for 6 weeks working with my children, and my receptivity and reactivity are kind of escalating.
Yeah.
You speak a lot about repair, and I suppose the word repair and guilt for me at this point sort of need to come in, because I know that a lot of the time there has to be a self-forgiveness, because I might be listening as a mother right now through the eyes of, I know this, but I haven't done it very well. You've talked to me about the brain and my child watching my facial, movements, and they're watching everything I'm doing. And I just noticed what was activated in me was the part of my brain that went, oh dear, I might not have done this so well right now. Could you speak a little bit to repair?
Yeah, and I think the researcher and a friend of mine, Ed Tronick, writes beautifully about this. And, I've edited over 75 textbooks in this field of interpersonal neurobiology, where we combine all the sciences into one. And Ed's textbook is one of our books. And in Ed's beautiful, beautiful work, what it shows is that, we're always having ruptures in our connection. Sometimes you may frighten your kid. Sometimes you may not tune into them like you'd like to. Sometimes you're distracted. And our children can get very agitated by that, sometimes withdraw from that. That's actually a natural part of any relationship, actually, not just parenting. So the key is to be aware of the direction you're trying to go in. And when you become aware, oh gosh, that interaction didn't go very well. My child felt unsafe with me, or not. The second S is being seen, was not seen by me. The third S is soothed, didn't get soothed by me. Then it's my responsibility to, first of all, try to be kind to myself, inner kindness, inner compassion, and then be kind and compassionate to the other, my partner or my child, and what Ed Tronick beautifully demonstrates, that the act of what you can call repairing ruptures or reconnecting after a disconnection, whatever phrase you like to use, it's the same thing. When things haven't gone well and there's a mess up, you clean up the mess up by apologizing, by owning your part in it, and going back to the person and saying, that didn't go so well. Let's have take two, because I don't think I really kept you safe, or I didn't see you, or I didn't soothe you, and so let's make a repair of that rupture. And what Ed says, which I think is just brilliant, is that it's actually those acts of repair that are a deep source of building resilience in your child. So instead of beating up on yourself and saying, oh my God, I didn't do it perfectly, instead of thinking about perfection, think about presence. And when you become present as a parent, then you're kind to yourself, and you become a role model for your child, teaching them how to be kind to themselves, as I get a dry mouth. So that even when you get emotional, you can say, let's talk about the meaning behind emotion, because emotion and meaning go hand in hand. So that got me very emotional, just thinking about making the repair. Yeah, good question. And that also lets us summarize the other S's, that you want to see the inner life of a child, meaning you don't just respond to behaviors. You let your mindsight means insight, empathy, and something called integration. And what you're doing is you're allowing yourself to have the insight into your own experience, sensing the inner experience of another, called empathic resonance, and then allowing there to be a differentiation of the two of you, and then a compassionate linkage, and that's called integration. So mindsight is insight, empathy, and integration. And you can learn these mindsight skills. It's what in Life Skills Group is being taught. It's what we here at the Institute teach. And the beautiful thing about mindsight parenting is that you get this opportunity to see the direction you want to take things in, repair when ruptures have happened, and realize even if you write books on the subject, there's no such thing as perfect parenting. The reason I always write the goof ups that I do, to my kids' amazement, the first time I did it, they were like, I think 10 and 15. I said, is this an accurate description of what happened? They go, yeah, it's accurate. But what's wrong with you that you'd want to advertise the world what a jerk you are? And I said, because that's just what it means to be a parent. Sometimes you act like a jerk. So is that okay to say jerk in Australia?
Yeah, we'll forgive you this time, Dan.
Okay, all right. Yeah.
So I think coming back to those 4 S's, and I think that they're...
Oh, and the 4th, by the way, is security. When they get safety, seen, soothed, reliably, but not always. And when it's ruptured, it's repaired. That's really, really important. No such thing as perfect parenting. Then they develop an overall sense of security. Sorry, that's the 4th S. Just wanted to include that.
So Dan, just on a really practical takeaway. So here I am distressed, and some of the feedback or some of the questions that were sent through was, and I keep coming back to this, the guilt. I'm working, how do I, my child's coming in, I'm trying to get my work done. I'm worried that I'm not giving them enough attention. I'm not seeing them. All we're doing is being in conflict around the fact that we're trying to get them online to do their schoolwork, of which they don't see it as the real world. They're seeing the online schoolwork as not real. I'm in reactive. What are some really simple, how can I de-escalate, or what is a really practical way that I can begin to communicate with my child? Because a lot of the languaging can really shift and change a dynamic. And I think it's hard, particularly at the moment where everything's just so reactive. What are things that I could begin to say? We just look at, let's look at one thing in particular. My child is getting really frustrated at the moment and very angry and is being incredibly disrespectful. And I feel like I'm trying the hardest I can possibly try, and all we're doing is ending up in conflict. What's something really simple that I could do to work with that situation right now?
Yeah. So as we get into that specific question, let's start with just a very simple word that if you're listening to this, if you just take this word in and let it sit with you for a moment, it's amazing how powerful this word, and the word is presence with a CE, presence. So let's just think about that for a moment. Presence. Now, presence means a receptive awareness. It's, whether you look at, there's a book, our CEO, Caroline Welch, who's also my wife, she wrote, called The Gift of Presence, that walks you through as a mindfulness guide for women. Or I wrote a book called Aware, the science and practice of presence. When you look at the research on attachment and say, well, is there something that summarizes all the different ways you can simply remember how to respond to Nikki's question to develop secure attachment in your child? And the answer is yes, and it's parental presence. So I say it because, there's a lot of books out there on parenting. There's a lot of statements being made. There's a lot of articles being written. And actually, as a scientist and a clinician and a dad, I'm going to say to you that if you can remember this one word, you would be amazed how empowered you will become. First of all, to handle your own distress. Let's talk specifically about the pandemic. That no matter what is going on, you're cultivating the ability to have kind of a spacious awareness that, I'll just show you this. This is a table where this thing I do called the Wheel of Awareness was made, and I'll just move this a little bit, where if you can imagine the hub represents being aware, but the rim here represents what you're aware of. People who can't distinguish the experience of a receptive presence that arises in awareness from the thing you're aware of. Like if I say, hello, Nikki, that was on the rim, the hello, but your knowing I said hello is represented in the hub. Now, what's absolutely fascinating about this is if you as a parent choose to do this wheel of awareness, and for free, you can go to my website and do it, or if you go, every Friday or Saturday, we have this pep talk thing I do. Come join us because we're diving deeply into the wheel. But presence has a science behind it, and it's that metaphor of a hub. So let's say it to you this way. Let's say you had a really hard day at work. Let's say you're working at home. You're feeling overwhelmed by your 3 kids at home. Your partner, she or he, is having trouble too. And you're just feeling overwhelmed. And one part of the rim here is your emotions. And here on your emotions, you're feeling distressed, terrified, deep in your body. Over here, a different part of the rim, you're having your heart pounding, you're breathing fast, your muscles are tight, right? So if you can't distinguish presence, which is in the hub, from the object of awareness, heart pounding or the fear, you then become the fear. You say, I am terrified, rather than there is an experience of terror arising in me. There's a feeling of tension in my muscles. So I know it sounds simple, but the research is super, super powerful, that when you learn the skill of distinguishing essentially the rim from the hub, everything changes. So now let's say I've done a practice like the wheel, or lots of practices that do this. Now I'm in one room doing my work. I walk to the other room to be with my kids. I want to parent from the hub. I don't want to parent from the rim. Of course, my kid says, can I have ice cream before dinner? Why can't I have ice cream before dinner? I've been sitting at home. I want the ice cream. I want the ice cream. I want the ice cream. Just as a simple example. Of course, you're not going to give them ice cream before dinner unless you're having a reverse meal day or whatever. But you could say, that's the stupidest idea I ever heard. That's ridiculous. Go to your room. And that's one reaction you can have. Or you can rest in your hub and see your child's statement as not just trying to irritate you, but there's a feeling behind it that might be understood something like this. I'm not in school with my friends. I'm really kind of scared of a world that seems like it's falling apart. I just want something that's rewarding, like an ice cream, and I want it now. I don't want to wait. When you come to parenting from the hub, as my mom says, who's now 90, she says, when you learn that technique, what before was annoying becomes amusing. And I'm an acronym nut, and one of the acronyms that can describe that hub experience is COAL, C-O-A-L. Curiosity, openness. Oh, my kid is asking for ice cream. Fascinating. We could all be dead, but we're not. And my kid is alive enough to ask for ice cream. How lucky am I? So open to what it is. Accepting doesn't mean you're passive about it. Doesn't mean you let them have the ice cream. It means that you see things clearly as they are. Oh, I wish the pandemic wasn't here. Oh my God, I wish my kid didn't ask for ice cream before dinner. Oh my God, I wish. That's all being lost on your rim. When you come from the hub, you go, I accept it. And L is love, amazingly. And I remember I did this in 5 cities in Australia. Love keeps on emerging from that hub. So if you can do a practice like the wheel and learn to access that, this is where presence comes from. There's a whole science behind it we don't need to get into. But the bottom line is, if you parent with presence, your children will develop secure attachment. And even though they may say the wildest things to you, like give me ice cream before dinner, I'm not going to school, I'm not going to do homework, instead of screaming and yelling at them from the rim, you come to them with this curiosity, openness, acceptance, and love from the hub, and then you work it out, because parenting is a privilege. You have the privilege of being a part of your children's life, no matter what difficulties, no matter how typical they are or atypical they are. And if you don't have that broader perspective of presence to say, we could all be dead, but we're not. So how do I let that shock me into love, and out of my irritation? And you may think I'm just like an idealist about this, but the research shows you can do this. You can teach yourself even to take these situations that seem like they're inevitably going to be negatively stressful and turn them into what's called positive stress.
You just made me smile then. I was saying to Lucia last night that
Nikki's daughter.
Oh, sorry. I was saying to my daughter last night.
I'll interpret for you.
Thank you, Dan.
She's a great person too.
Yeah, I was saying to my daughter, who will probably get very frustrated that I'm talking about her online. But anyway, I'll deal with that after and repair that. She was saying to me, she had finished year 12 and she'd saved up to go and do her gap year, and she's isolated, and, the story that we all have around what's happening and the impact on what we have. And I looked at her last night. I get goosebumps saying this. And I said to her, what a privilege it is to be isolated with you and to have this condensed time when normally we're moving so fast in the world. And we're often rushing to meetings or to the grocery shop or to appointments and things. And there was this moment of deep, deep connection where, it was what a privilege that the world has been brought to such a moment of stillness in our homes. And that ability to be able to, in a way, reset, and repair relationships. Was just a moment. So you just activated that. I remembered that from last night. And it is also a reframe. I once had this beautiful yoga teacher, and he said to me, Nikki, conflict can only exist between 2 points. And he held up his hands and he said, I don't want this to be here. I do want this to be here. And the conflict will just keep banging between the two points. When I sit in that moment of deep acceptance of, wow, look where I am right now. I love when you said about the privilege of parenthood, because it is a profound opportunity, not only to begin to develop those connections, but also to really begin to work on who I am and beginning to see my family in front of me, and develop more love and slowing down. You just got me all activated in love when you talked about that.
And Nikki, it's great that you share that perspective because, we could certainly be here on this parenting in uncertain times and, start making all sorts of behavioral proclamations, behave like this, behave like this, behave like that, And certainly there are ways of acting in your parenting, behaving in your parenting moves that are helpful. And what we're saying is that they come from this place of presence, this receptive, loving, curious, open, accepting state that, however you can find it, if it's doing something like the wheel of awareness, that's good. If it's just remembering that your task is to listen and be receptive. That's what receptive awareness means, and I personally find that when you remind yourself as a parent that there is a mind beneath behavior. And what does that mean? So the word mindsight was created, when I was in medical school and my teachers were acting like there was no mind of their patients. They would tell them they were dying and that was it. And they walk out of the room and I said, don't you want to find out how they feel that you told them they were dying? They go, why? I've told them they're dying. That's all I have to do. And, that physical sight is useful. You want to stop a car at a red light. That's the physical world. But there's a world of the mind that the word mindsight tries to capture that, when you as a parent use that as your fundamental principle, then when your kid demands ice cream, then what you can do is drop into presence, let their behavior, I need ice cream, come through you. And now the next step is say, I'd like to know what the mind of my child is right now as they're asking for ice cream. Yeah. Right? What's the meaning of the request? And as you start to communicate, this is now there are things you do. You don't just sit there like a yogi, just meditating. You're now going to do things as a parent that say, tell me more about the ice cream. Well, I really want the ice cream. And you go, I want some ice cream too. And it's a great idea. And the thing is, if we eat sugar before the meal, it will dampen our hunger, and we need to keep ourselves well nutriized. We have to eat well,
You make your words.
we have to eat our words well. We got to eat well. We have to have good nutrition. So, do you want vanilla, chocolate, or strawberry ice cream after dinner? And we'll get it ready, and maybe we'll even add some nuts on it, or strawberries or something like that. And then your kid goes, strawberries, yeah, strawberries. And then you go, good, I can't wait. Let's have our dinner now. And so you have fun with it. And listen, and, this is another kind of statement, but, it's so true that the days may seem long, but the years are really short.
Yeah.
When I just saw a few minutes ago, my 30-year-old son who does his music in our studio in the garage in the back, it was just so beautiful to see this 30-year-old musician, Alex Siegel, go do his music. And I used to remember the little boy who was 2 when we moved into the house, and here he is, a 30-year-old, and like that, it goes by, and that's what we mean, Nikki and I, by the privilege of it all. It goes fast. You couldn't have predicted a pandemic. You didn't create the pandemic, and here it is, massively disrupting the world all at once. So how do we show our children how to deal with uncertainty? And this gets to the second part of everything, the uncertainty piece. The brain wants to create what one poet whose poem was written on the entryway to the Brooklyn Public Library, it said this. It said, having abandoned the flimsy fantasy of certainty, I decided to wander. Now, wandering is really about not just what you do physically, but it's what you do with your mind in terms of curiosity and not being grasping onto one way of doing things. And when you think about that phrase, the flimsy fantasy of certainty, part of what really gets us into trouble in parenting, and the pandemic is one thing we're definitely going to talk about, but just think about in general, at least in the United States, parents are so anxious to get certain. They want their child to get high grades and get into certain colleges and then try to get into certain graveyards or something. There's this whole incredible fantasy of certainty, because certainty gets associated with safety, you see? So you as a parent want to guarantee something, get high grades, get high scores, get into this college, that college. And it's understandable because you want to keep your children safe. So in a very Vuca world, volatile, quickly changing, uncertain, you don't know what's going to happen. It's hard to predict. Complex, it's an intricate set of massively interconnected things that are happening. Ambiguous, even if you knew the things right in front of you, you read 10 books on it, you still wouldn't know what to do. That's what ambiguous means. So VUCA times are challenging. So you take a deep breath and you go, okay, how do we live fully each day, embracing the VUCA qualities of these uncertain times, right? So you go, okay, well, my goal as a parent is to keep my child safe. Well, uncertainty and safety feel like opposites, right? So then you take a deep breath and you go, actually, the world is always uncertain, just different degrees of realization of that uncertainty. And while people are losing their lives and losing their livelihood, and there's a lot of human suffering going on for sure, so it's not to minimize that, we still have this moment to really embrace the reality of uncertainty and really see it head on as a part of what we do.
And I think, in listening to you just then, Dan, and in reading some of the questions that have been posted, and thank you so much for engaging with this webinar, I suppose one of the things that I'd love to discuss with you is around the critical skills of social emotional learning or connection, a lot of the questions are around, exactly like what you were saying. How do I get my child to start doing their schoolwork? How do I, which we're all dealing with right now. But one of the things that was really activated when I was listening to you is, again, the incredible opportunity that we can begin to not only develop presence, but also begin to work on our communication, and also begin to develop compassion and empathy at home, and begin to slow down and really begin to see each other now. And I'm just wondering if you could speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a beautiful way, Nikki, of describing how what can at first be seen only as a crisis can be actually an opportunity. That there are new possibilities of ways we see each other, as you're beautifully describing it, cultivating presence in a way that before we were in the BAU, the business as usual, busy, trying to be certain of this, certain of that. And so these are times when the flimsy fantasy of certainty can be identified, abandoned, and then a decision made to wander, to really embrace life fully, is where each day is a different day. Literally, there is no moment that repeats itself when you're awake and aware, right? So you could say, well, hold on, that's not how my life feels, because there's something called top-down processing, where the brain is constantly trying to assess from what happened before, how to anticipate what's happening next, how to predict, how to be certain. The flimsy fantasy of certainty, that beautiful phrase from the poet, is actually a mental construction. A fantasy is not just something that exists in the world. It's something your mind constructed. It's certainly shared in culture, for sure. So what that phrase, having abandoned the flimsy fantasy of certainty, I decided to wander, implies directly, is that this pandemic is an opportunity to abandon the flimsy fantasy of certainty and to say, okay, I'm going to try to be present for each moment. Now, when you do that, amazingly, you say the pandemic is ending livelihoods, it's ending lives. This is not a good thing. Let me support the frontline workers in medicine and delivery and food services and all the ways, whether you're working in those fields or being supported by them. Let me even have gratitude for them. So let me work in the world to try to support those who are really supporting everybody now. And then you say, how do I actually take a deep breath so that I sleep well? Because sleep is one of the best predictors of your immune system functioning. So if you're all freaked out, do some work about the freaking out, And so in this way, what you have an opportunity to do is to explore together that you can be fully present.
Yeah, absolutely. I just wanted to bring in one of the questions that's popped up, Dan, that I think it sort of bookends what we've just been talking about, had a lot of votes on it. Staying at home altogether has shone the spotlight on our already fragile relationships and the fact that we're definitely not on the same page. How do both parents work together to parent when we're very different? There is a continual conflict we disagree on how to parent. And I think that if I could just speak to that really briefly, I was speaking with another colleague last night saying anything that was already fragile feels like a light has been shone on any form of fracture at the moment. And I'm just wondering, what are your thoughts on that question? It's a great question. Oh, Dan.
No, we're good. We're good. It's a really interesting and important question because when you tease apart the fundamental challenges we have, someone once said they're just making everything more so. Yeah. So if you're having trouble with your spouse, let's say, and you don't agree on different ways of doing things, it's going to make what may have been subtle even more so. If you're having trouble with your child because they can't pay attention, they're going to probably have that more so. If they're anxious, if they're depressed, it becomes more so. So part of the more so of all that is the challenge of facing some of the things that were there all along, right? So now, how do you do that when you're in the midst of a pandemic? Well, that's especially challenging, you know? It's especially challenging because what we're trying to do is see life fully awake, right? So we may not like what we see. We may wish we were getting back to a time when we were busy with our work, going away, and not having the difficulties with our partners like we do, right? And so this is this is a part of a moment of challenge where the different resources that are available, whether it's coming to the gift of presence I mentioned by Caroline Welch has a great way of seeing how you need to pivot, is what Caroline points out, is that pivoting when things need to be changing, pacing yourself just right. And especially, it's a fantastic discovery that finding purpose in life is really, really important. So if you're having trouble with your partner, let's say, and you're not agreeing with what the shared purpose is on parenting, that's something to sit down and have honest conversations about that.
And I'm going to probably embarrass myself slightly, but I made up a rule lately. It's not a rule, it's a guideline. And, we all know about the 80-20. We talk about 80-20, but I've decided to put the 80-20 rule over all of my relationships, because I feel that having an understanding around the impact of how I'm interpreting the pandemic, how you're interpreting the pandemic, we have enough trust equity in our relationship that 80% of the time you will be a relatively aware, self-aware, empathetic, gentle human being. And 20% of the time you're allowed to be unaware and maybe not the most grounded human being. And it's been really interesting implementing this into my relationships, because what I have seen, and from the feedback that I was just reading, and I think Tanya just posted the word tolerance. I think it's tolerance, but also compassion, and a deep understanding that how I interpret my own level of security and safety might not be how my partner or my other children or even one of my work colleagues. So that activation that might come up that might not normally be there, if I can be less reactive and begin to have a little bit more compassion and really get curious around, I wonder what's going on for you right now. I wonder what's going on for you. We have a beautiful thing that we do with the students at Life Skills Group, and even down to very, very young children, that we get down really low, we look them in the eyes and we say, what do you need right now? And it's a real stopper for a lot of young children, because it makes them go, no one's actually asked me what I need. First of all, most of them don't know, but it's a real, someone's genuinely asking me. And I've been taking that into my work relationships and my home relationships around, if I'm reacting, it's affecting me, it's affecting my chemicals, it's affecting my health and my anxiety. But if I can begin to look at you and ask you, what do you really need right now? What do you really need right now?
Yeah, I think that's a really beautiful way of describing, the centrality of compassion, right? Mm-hmm. In the Mindsight view, we would say you had insight into yourself. So, this is beyond just tolerance. It's beyond just saying, I'm going to tolerate what's going on. It's actually, I'm going to be having in the second part of Mindsight, empathy, I'm going to have what's called empathic concern. I'm going to actually be concerned about what's going on. And then the third part of, Mindsight is integration, where I say, which is kindness and compassion, basically with a kind inner intention. I really want to do three things with compassion. I want to say, what is going on with this person? As you're saying, Nikki, beautifully, what are their needs? Then I'm going to consider, okay, now that I've imagined what their needs are and what the suffering, what the pain, discomfort is from, their agitation, I then consider, wow, let me understand that so I can know what I might do something to help them. Then the third thing is I do something to help them. So that compassionate stance, the research is quite remarkable, actually, that compassion, which is integration made visible, compassion lets us move beyond what is like an intellectual understanding and turn it into action for the benefit of others. It's basically being of service. And this stance is quite remarkable, actually. A compassionate stance, what it actually does.
And I think just as we begin to sort of wrap up, we'll walk back through a little bit of what we've been doing. And yet I would really love your feedback on not tolerating inappropriate behavior, because there's one part that we can speak to around having compassion and understanding. Then there's also boundary setting and being able to say, that's not okay. That's not okay. Could we, I'm just wondering if there's something that you could add just as a communication skill if we do find ourselves in that situation. When two people are escalated, we're trying to develop compassion, and yet how do we also set a boundary in these times too?
Well, I think it's so interesting. Let's go to the third part of Mindsight, integration, and talk about what that means, because I think when parents understand the concept of integration, then the answer to your question comes kind of from the inside out, if you will. So integration is where you basically have two things happening. One is things are allowed to be different. The second is they become linked. And in the linkage, they don't lose their difference. So picture it kind of like a fruit salad. When you mix different fruit pieces up together, it's not a smoothie where, I don't know what you call it in Australia or New Zealand, where you blend it up. You're not blending it. A smoothie. You're not making a smoothie, you're making a fruit salad. And the apples, the oranges, the mangoes, the papayas, the pineapples, the blueberries. Now I'm getting hungry. But all these things in the fruit salad, they don't become each other. They retain their unique individuality within the fruit salad. Yeah. But the fruit salad has a synergy to it. That is, there's something about eating all those differentiated pieces of fruit that's quite different from if you blended it up in a smoothie, but it's different than if you just spent one time eating one fruit, then the next fruit, et cetera, et cetera. So that's what integration is. Integration is harmony, it's synergy. Now, with your question, Nikki, here's what I would say, is that if you embrace integration as fundamentally what we're here on earth to do, which is what I believe very deeply is our purpose for being here, then you say, in that example you're giving, okay, what's my differentiated response? I don't like what my partner's saying, or I don't like my child asking for ice cream before dinner, or whatever. You can have that reaction. You don't get mad at yourself for saying, I don't like that. But that's just one point on your rim, if you will, right? It's just one point on your rim. It's not the whole of who you are. Now from your hub, you go, I wonder why she's asking for ice cream before dinner. I wonder why he's saying he's not going to help with dinner preparation or whatever to your partner, and then you bring curiosity, openness, acceptance, and love to the exploration so that you're compassionately trying to understand what's going on with them, see how you can help. Oh, they've had a really bad day. Oh, your child, is really missing their friends, so they want a quick reward with the sugar that comes with ice cream. All these things totally change how you can have your differentiated response. Your child or your partner have their differentiated experience. You may not agree with it. You may not have it. You may not share it, but they're different from you. They are not you. And now you're differentiating them. You give them space to be themselves without you having to be like that way. Like I hear people always say, I don't feel that way, or I don't think of it that way. Well, that's not the point. The point isn't that everyone thinks like you do. The point is integration, where you differentiate. I'm different from you, you're different from me, and I accept the difference. I don't have to become you. You don't have to become me. That's differentiation. But I want to know more about you. I want to understand it. And if there's a way I can do some kind of action to reduce your distress, that's what I'm here for. That's why we say that integration made visible is kindness and compassion. So when you have mindsight, you have insight, empathy, and integration, you're good to go as a parent. It's mindsight parenting, and when you start embracing that, what I've been amazed at as a family therapist, that, when you basically teach these mindsight skills, almost every situation gets improved.
Yeah.
Because when things are not integrated, they're in chaos or rigidity. Rigidity means they're unchanging and unyielding and can't be adaptive. Chaos means they're totally unpredictable and wild and crazy, like this, like that. So, and I'm sorry for using the word crazy. I didn't mean to use that. Let me edit the word crazy and just say they're wild and, overwhelmingly out of control. Right. No, really. I used the word crazy once, and a mom with a child with schizophrenia got really upset and said, "Don't use that word crazy, because for me, crazy is a real serious thing. You're just saying, oh, crazy, crazy." And I really appreciate that. And so I try to remove it from my vocabulary, and that was a mistake. So I want to apologize to you and everyone else. Anyway, so I apologize. So, chaos is when things are out of control, rigidity when things are unchanging. So there's an optimal flow between the two that's a sense of harmony. Sometimes you go towards chaos, sometimes you go towards rigidity. I know some days in the pandemic, I'm really rigid, I'm getting a little chaotic. I can go flow back and forth. The flow in the middle is this flow of harmony. It's flexible, adaptive, it's coherent, it holds well together over time. It's energized and it's stable. And, in our different seminars for therapists, for citizens, for parents, for coaches, for everybody, we dive deeply into integration to talk about that. And integration is so interesting because it looks like it is the mechanism of well-being. It's the mechanism of resilience. So in the frontline medical workers, we're doing this whole seminar in the United States for people in the front lines in hospitals. And we teach about integration. And this is where, once you see the secret sauce, you know how to make the different items on the menu.
Yeah, thank you. I'm also very aware of the time and your family commitments as well.
Yes, thank you.
I want to really just begin to wrap up. And I think that was like one of the most nourishing hours that I've had. And from looking at all the comments, I can't begin to thank you enough, because I know, again, that, we pulled this together in a matter of days. I'm also very aware that we had such an overwhelming response that there was a huge wait list, and these questions that have been coming through are really important to Dan and to myself, that we will circle back on. I'll also pop up in a follow-up email a list of Dan's books and a link to his website and Caroline's book, as well as the Life Skills Go programs for Australia and for New Zealand. In that, there's please keep those questions coming, because we will pull down all of those questions. It was sitting here trying to get to all the questions and make sure that your voice was heard, particularly on a new platform. Thank you for your patience. I feel incredibly humbled, particularly for the beginning of the session. I think we're going to laugh about this for years to come. And Dan, once again, I think amazing to be with you. And is there anything that you want to say?
No, Nikki, just thank you to you, and thank you to everyone who helped put this together, and thank you to everyone who's joined us. There's a lot to learn together in this planetary pandemic, and my deepest hope is that we can transform the suffering that is definitely happening all around this globe into a moment of a deep breath for nature and a deep breath for humanity, to rethink how we live and not let this suffering, the deaths and the loss of livelihood, be in vain, that we actually honor the seriousness of what's going on and think deeply about how to turn this into a moment in human history when we can actually see a way of living in a more compassionate, kind, and integrative way. And that's certainly, I think, something that we can do. Humanity is a beautiful, beautiful family. And just like any family, you can have tough times with each other. And you can also take a deep breath and know that we're all siblings together, and how we can work together to realize Earth is not our trash can.
Mm.
It's our body. And how we learn to treat this body called Earth in a better way, more integrated way, is something I think we can all learn to do through this moment. And I really am grateful to you, Nikki, for inviting me to join you today.
Thank you. And I look forward to stay tuned, Dan, and I have some more things coming your way. So I just once again, incredibly humbled. Thank you. And Dan, it's, you're just so grateful for everything. And thank you to all the parents that were here that really were vulnerable, humble, reached out and asked for help. And I just want to say that it's amazing, the strength to be able to put a hand up and say, hey, I'm not coping, or I need help with this. I think as humans, we all need to feel more comfortable doing that a lot more regularly and being able to ask for that. So thank you. For all of you that are commenting on getting the link to this, yes, we will be uploading that. There will be a follow-up email of the books and all the things that we've just spoken about. We will also be circling back to get these questions and to look at how we move forward from here. And thank you, the feedback. Dan, can you see the comments?
Yes, they're beautiful.
Yeah,
they're beautiful. Yeah, it's great.
Blown away. And thank you so much that we can, and this is something that I'm going to speak on behalf of you, Dan, I'm so sorry, but even though we're half a world away, we're all facing the same issues. And I know that the connection that I feel and the work that we do, Dan, even though we're doing it on the other sides of the world at the moment, is the same work. So let's all come together. Thank you. Deeply.
Thank you, Nikki. Thank you, everyone. Be well, and we'll talk soon.
Absolutely. Take care. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.